Hello everybody, and welcome to today's video on tape. It might be not necessarily an intuitive subject for a lot of people, but there are different types of tapes for different types of applications. You may have remembered such shows or never been fortunate enough to watch such a show as Red Green, but this one is called duct tape. It is a great all-purpose tape, and probably comes with a great slogan from the show that everybody should know, that if the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. And he was definitely handy with duct tape. So in this case, this is a good general purpose tape if you want something not to move. Is it vacuum proof? Is it used for ducting? No. Even though it is called duct tape, it is not for ducting. So remember this at all times in the future. It is good possibly for if you're desperate for automotive repair or for taping up a bag or anything like that, but I would never recommend using it for your own ducting around the house. If you are to do that, I would recommend using actual aluminum foil tape, which is actually rated for it. There is a liquid bonder that is also available for commercial use and is used for commercial buildings for exterior applications and interior, but for general purpose use for around the house or residential use, or if you need to close up a duct that's leaking, this is typically what you want to be using: a basic aluminum foil tape with one side adhesive that has a backer that tears off. If you have a residence that is leaking or you have a point where it wasn't taped up properly, finding these is relatively easy. Getting a hold of them is relatively cheap. They're the best option when it comes down to actual ducting. Now, when it comes down to other types of tape that you might see as either a worker or somebody on a home and you don't know what it is your standard electrical tape. This comes in all sorts of different colors. It comes in all sorts of different finishes. And it comes in all sorts of different resistances for the type of taped bond that you'd be looking for. This is just a basic electrical tape rated for a basic 120 volt circuit here in Canada, being North America. You'll find this type of tape also used in other applications as well too. I don't know the exact specs that this is based for, but obviously I know that this is good enough for a basic circuit. Most of the time, you're not necessarily using it unless you're cleaning up for something that is a bond in an area that wasn't desired for it, or in some cases might just be that it was a damaged circuit in the first place. Now, when it comes down to other types of tape, this one is called tuck tape. A lot of the time in North America in wood frame construction, we use something called 6 mil poly. It is used as a vapor barrier on the inside of the wood frame structure, which repels a lot of moisture from getting through into your exterior of your building from the interior. Usually that's from the hot or the cold transfer between the thermal barrier of your property being the insulation on the exterior walls. This is rated as a vapor proofing method for poly, so essentially it blocks air from passing through. You'll sometimes see this on the exterior of buildings now with Tyvek siding being red streaks. People use it for basically creating a waterproof bond. I'm not 100% sure personally if it is rated for such uses. I know that Tyvek has their own tape, but I don't know if it's rated within their system for warranty or not. But if somebody does know, that would be great to know. This tape in general, even for drywall bags where we have to dump them, specifically in my area, we have to use this tape specifically. It used to be that we could use actual duct tape on the bags, but that has as well changed. Now on to another basic tape that you might know if you've ever worked in a warehouse or shipped a parcel. Your basic Scotch tape. Called by the brand is what I grew up with it. It's basically just a masking tape to cover for a surface. It is generally used obviously for box and other cardboards, so if you just have to throw something together cheaply and quickly, this is a decent tape. Most tapes nowadays are fairly expensive as adhesives have become a little bit more expensive, I would say. So as you get into your finer types of tapes for actual masking for paint, which I will get into the tools for that and some basic tricks of the trade for people in the future, but your basic masking tape, your lightest resistance masking tape is usually what you'll be using for a lot of applications, especially if you're working near finished walls. The reason for it is you don't want to tear up the surface for any form of vinyl paint or relatively fresh paint. So if I went to put this tape on my wall, when I pull it off, I'm very unlikely to peel it away unless the wall itself hasn't been prepared properly. If you are marking a surface, or if you just need to put a temporary mark on a wall with a pencil, putting down this first, marking lightly with the pencil so that way you're not scoring the surface and potentially tearing it off after, is also very important. In general, this type of tape is what I buy and what I use for most applications. There are some times where I'll use a little bit more adhesive-based paint, or painter's tape, for taping off or masking for surfaces that will come in contact with paint but don't need the hardest of adhesives for keeping it down. This would be more of a mid-range type of tape, and the reason for it is the adhesive on this is a lot stronger and does create a greater bond to the surfaces that it mounts to. When you start looking at all sorts of different types of tapes, depending where you're going, sometimes they'll be green for their lighters, sometimes they'll be blue, sometimes you'll have all sorts of other types of options when you go around to different places for it. So you have to try and remember to ask which one is a general use, a mid-range, a very light, or even just try peeling it back a little bit and seeing what you do. And the final one here is painter's tape from Frog Tape. This one actually has a specific compound in here which is designed to bond with latex paints, so that way if it spills past underneath where it may not have been pressed down fully, it will actually bond with the vinyl and create a nice line, or generally a nice line, for when you're peeling back the paint. It typically has a working window of about, I'd say, 24 hours after it's been painted at a very maximum, and a few hours after, while the paint is still relatively liquid, but not necessarily hardened fully. Anything past that, sometimes it'll pull on with the rest of the vinyl and you'll peel off a whole section of the wall. Not necessarily the most fun, but is something to be aware of when you're working with the product. This general type of tape here is relatively more expensive than a regular paint, so being mindful of what you're dealing with for a product and getting used to it, or even just trying it out first, is always good. Likewise, where you would use a paint or a tape like this or a tape like this, you may not want to use duct tape because the adhesive in a duct tape is very strong in comparison to most of the rest of these tapes. When you're taping cardboard together, this works great. Sometimes even these work great. These do work really well, but if you ever want to take that box apart, you are likely not to do it with this. I hope this has been informative. If you have any additional questions on the different types of tapes or the different types of applications for those tapes, please give me a message in the comments, or shoot me a message in my email, which I'll be linking with the channel. Thank you.